And thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming out to MVJ's webinar with Bill Lord on tips to get a job and succeed in interviews. Bill Lord is a retired news director from a couple of Washington, D.C.'s local news stations. And he's also a Vietnam War veteran. So he's going to give you guys some tips on how to proceed in job interviews. Bill, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And I am happy to be here. I was lucky to be in the media for as long as I was. It's kind of always described as a young person's game, but somehow I managed to work until I was almost 70. But what that means to you is that I was in leadership positions for about 40 years in these places. And I ended up doing hundreds and hundreds of job interviews. And I hired lots and lots of people, probably, I can't count, but I'd say more than 100 people I hired over time. And so I have developed kind of a list of do's and don'ts that I think will be helpful to anybody going in and getting a job in the media, because honestly, it's hard to fathom what people want. But here's kind of the outset. When I had people in for interviews, I was not necessarily looking to hire the smartest person or the hardest working person or the prettiest person. Obviously, those are all attributes you look for. But what I wanted more than anything was somebody who was going to be a team player. Because what I was doing is I was essentially casting my newsroom. I wanted to bring in people who were going to get along with the people that I already have there. I wanted people who were going to work for the station's goals or for the group's goals. I wanted people who would help their coworkers. I mean, so many things are collegial and really just kind of informal in a newsroom, where if somebody's hair is on fire, you go help them until their hair is not on fire, and then you go do your own job. But I really wanted those kind of helpful team player people. Now, for those of you with military backgrounds, that's a leg up, because there's not many jobs in the military I can think of that don't require team efforts. I mean, I guess unless we have a whole room full of snipers, which I hope we don't have, they work alone. But almost everybody else comes into it with this kind of team mentality. And that's what I always tell people to stress when they're in an interview. Basically tell them that you want to be on a team. You want to basically help out. Be a positive person. So many people go in and they can be aloof, or they can be nervous or whatever, but enthusiasm and a desire to help and all that really, really count a lot for getting people to like you, to be interested in you, and to want to bring you into the group. Because ultimately, you can hire a whole bunch of people that don't work well together. And if they're all great individuals, you still don't have a team. So what you want to do is sell yourself as that team player, which, it's not that difficult, but it's funny how many people forget that. I mean, sometimes people have come into job interviews, and I'll give you a couple of things not to do. People will come into a job interview, they will sit down in front of the interviewer, and they'll say what you can do for them. And there was just nothing worse for me than having somebody come in and say, well, I really want this job because this might lead to what I really want to do, which is over here at probably one of your competitors. But you could do this because I really want to get into the business, and you can show me how, and then I'll take whatever you teach me and I'll go someplace else with it. Well, that's not a big incentive to hire. I just don't want to hire people who think that I'm doing something for them. I want them to come in and tell them, this is what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to work with your team. I'm going to be your guy, your person. It's just a matter of, can we make all this work? Not what I can do for you, but what you as the employee are going to do for me and for the company we work for. The other thing that people tend to do, and this is mostly younger people, but it could also be people who are coming in from a different point of view, the military into the private business. A lot of people will come in and say, I know I'm really not qualified for this job, but if you just give it to me, I can get my feet in the door and I can learn how to do stuff. Well, never tell them you're not qualified, because they may believe you. They may actually say, well, this is the kind of thing where don't become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You basically go in there and you say, instead of that, you just say, I'm a really quick learner and I want to learn and I want to ask questions and I want to basically pick the minds of all my coworkers so I can get as good as they are. It's so much the approach you take and the attitude you take that will get you in. So many people tend to sell themselves short, or they tend to get into a situation where they're nervous and they can act aloof and sometimes arrogant even. You just don't want to do that. You want to just be a good person, a nice person, a helpful person, because that's really what, and again, I call it the casting director rather than the job interviewer, because that's what they're doing. They're trying to build a team and you need to be a part of that team. I'm going to give you an example of somebody who was not that. Back a long time ago, I was a news director in Los Angeles. It was during the O.J. Simpson trial. Now, there was no better place to be in journalism than Los Angeles during the O.J. trial, because it was just every single day there was something new and something exciting. And, we were live everywhere. But I had one reporter who I would argue still was the best reporter in town. He was amazing. He could write these long, involved stories in very short periods of time and get them edited and get them on all the newscasts. He was brilliant. But he was also the source of virtually every problem I had in the newsroom, because he, when people would come into my office and just very upset, it was because he would go tell people how much he was making, which he never told the truth about, how much he was making more than they were, and how much we valued him more than we valued them. And he would imply that he was having an affair with one of the producers, and that's why he got more time in the stories than people, mere mortals, were allowed for their stories. And it just became one thing after another. And I let him go. I had to fire him because he was not doing anything for the team as much as what he was doing for himself and for his own gratification and his own ego, and causing enormous problems. So from this guy, I developed one of my favorite phrases, and I actually used it on him. I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but I said, as good as you are, as brilliant as you are, nobody in this newsroom is good enough to be an asshole. And so that's what I had to use that line on him. Now, he went on to succeed in the networks and do great things, so I don't feel like I ruined his career. But at the same time, it's an illustration of why you look for people who are going to work well together, rather than somebody who's out there to make a name for themselves and to put their goals ahead of the team. So that's kind of what I try to do when I do these things. Another question I get asked an awful lot is about resumes. One of my hated things. You got to remember, I had probably a dozen jobs in the media, so I had to be on the other side of the interview fence many times. And I used to hate writing resumes. And it finally occurred to me to simplify. And I tell people now, your resume should be one page. You don't have to tell them your whole life story, and you got to know who you are, where you live, what your phone number and email address are. You got to give them basics of what your job history is. But if you delivered pizzas when you were 16 years old, nobody cares. Just leave that kind of stuff out. So you have room to get the basics in and create some intrigue. Write about your personal interests. You can, a little line at the bottom of the resume was one of my favorite things as an interviewer, because somebody would say, well, I like skydiving, or I like bicycle racing, or I like this or like that, or, I grow flowers, anything that becomes a conversation starter. Because what happens is you end up having all of these discussions with the job interviewee, and it's all technical. It's all how you do the job. It's all your skills. It's what would you do in this case or that case, or the hated question, where are you going to be in 5 years, that kind of thing. But this gives you a chance to get to know somebody on, just a conversational basis. You learn things about them. You learn whether or not you're going to like them, or they're going to get along with them. And they learn about you at the same time because you're interested in what their hobby is. And so those are things to keep in there, but don't have a 4-page resume that lists every possible thing and every accomplishment and every detail of your life, because guys like me didn't read that far. I wanted the basics, and I wanted to do that. And it made me a better interviewer to have it all in one place where I could just pick out things and hit you with questions. Now, speaking of questions, this will be a terrible hour for all of you if you let me sit here and talk the whole time. So what I would like all of you to do is ask questions, interrupt, throw me any curveball you can. I usually can make up a pretty good answer, but even if I can't, I'll admit it because if we interact, it will be much more fun for everybody than if we sit here and let me drone on. So please jump in with questions. Now, Devin, I can see you on my screen because I'm on an iPad, but I don't see the group. So
Right.
If you see arms waving, you're going to have to interrupt and say, so-and-so has got a question, or go from there.
I do have one question for you, though. So
Okay, fine.
on the interviewer side of things, so we can kind of get an idea of what interviewers are thinking. When they see these interests on a resume, does that kind of help the interview process go more smoothly, kind of help you get an idea of, like, during the interview who the person is?
Yeah, it allowed me in many ways, and one of my great goals in these things was to put people at ease. Like I said, I've been on the other side of it. I've been in interviews where I was really nervous because I really wanted the job and I really wanted to impress these people, and I didn't want to appear to be, all welled up. Well, once you start talking about somebody's hobbies or interests, well, they're conversational about that. They know about it. It gives you an opportunity to relax everybody and knock down some of the barriers. So that was kind of my purpose in doing that. And that's my purpose in advising people to have stuff like that in their resume, because, if you're a skydiver, somebody's going to want to know about it. You jump out of planes, tell me about that. And you don't have to, you can even read Russian literature. You don't have to be some daredevil, but just whatever interests you have. I mean, a lot of them are just, hiking, walking, reading, water skiing, but it gives you something to talk about that isn't formal. It gives you an informal way of just letting everybody's guard down and conversing, which is one of the, the great things. I mean, it's one of the hardest things you will go through in an interview is forcing yourself to relax. I know it's hard, but honestly, the whole idea is to not just say you're a team player, but you want to exude confidence. You want to basically seem like you're not overwhelmed by all this stuff. You need to fake it when the interviewer asks you questions that you just don't have the slightest idea, not what the answer is, but you don't even know what he's talking about. You have to basically stay calm, stay in the moment, and basically say, I'm a quick learner. I know how to do all this stuff. I'll pick the brains of anybody around me, and I'll be as good as they are within a week. Just, being conversational and informal, and it just allows you to kind of have that relaxed way about you, because an interview isn't any fun for either side if one person is really nervous. And it's usually not the interviewer, because we've done it hundreds of times and we have all of our little stock questions. That's the other thing you have to do. You have to be a little tolerant, because you're going to get a whole series of canned questions. My least favorite ever, and this was, I took a chance on this one. I was interviewing for a news director job, and I sat down with the station manager, and she said, "Bill, what's your philosophy of news?" And it's like, well, It was even worse than that. She put down a list, and I could see she had about 20 questions written on this list. And that was the first one. What's your philosophy of news? Well, that's a pretty big question to ask for openers. And my response to that was, please put away your list and let's just talk about real things that happen in this newsroom, real goals that this station has. So I can talk about that. I mean, my philosophy of news is like anybody else's. You get there first, you do the best job, and you win. It's like, it doesn't require a whole bunch of explanation, but you will get those questions. The other one I think I even mentioned before, where are you going to be in 5 years? Well, nobody knows where they're going to be in 5 years. Prison, you just basically, you want to basically have responses to those things that are polite, and know that they're boring, stupid questions, but you can't tell the person that they're boring, stupid questions. You basically have to politely respond to all those things, because that's how you get the job, is to be a team player, play on that team.
They just fake it till you make it, right?
What's that?
So just fake it till you make it, is that right?
Yeah, you have to fake it. And there are some other things that you have to do, or I guess this goes into the don't category, but there are a lot of topics that you just can't talk about in interviews. The person doing the interview can't ask you about race. They can't ask about religion or sexual orientation or body image, and the list goes on and on. So I don't think you should bring those things up either. You don't want to appear defensive about anything. You don't want to appear aggressive about anything. You don't want to go in and say, I'm gay, what are you going to do about it? You basically got to you've got to basically not have those aggressive tendencies, and you got to basically realize that these are topics that both sides avoid. But ultimately, you're going to find that everybody learns everything anyway. They're going to know all these things about you. They're going to know your attitudes without specifically talking about them in a job interview. So those are good things to do. I also tell people, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's the only way you're going to get
in. So I had a job interview last week. It was with I'll just say it was with NBC Network, and I'm interested in being a photographer there, and I was coming into that interview with the hope of doing international work, because I feel like there's sort of a new market opening up for international journalism that has been closed since like 2016, really. But then she told me, like, no, it wouldn't be like that. You'd have to get a spot as a freelancer. And then I adjusted, and I thought, okay, that's pretty cool, because I could do a freelance job and not interfere with all the work that I'm presently doing, and not have to sign a new contract. So it seemed kind of cool. And she was, sorry, one half a story. So then she also asked me, what my experience was with lighting. And the truth is, I'm a good photographer, but I'm not like one of these pros who knows everything about lighting, And so I was honest about that. And I said, I'm not, I said, I've been in rooms, and I've worked with other photographers that did really, like, because I know those, those network jobs, they have like lights everywhere for these specialty interviews and stuff. So I was honest with her. I told her I didn't know that much about lighting, but that I'm really smart and that I'll kind of learn it, just the way I didn't. And I made a comparison to how I didn't know how to use the news truck, and within 2 weeks I was really good at it, right? And I was grateful that I was honest, because then she said, oh, here's our lighting director. He's going to give you a tour of the newsroom. And I was like, oh, geez, thank God I didn't fake this, and try and act like. But when you get those questions about something that you're underqualified for, or that's some aspect of the job that you're underqualified for, how do you kind of, is there a way to sort of pivot the conversation into something you're good at, or do you just own up to it and say, I'll learn, or
Well, you have to basically massage the situation a little bit. What I would have done in a case like that is say, I light interviews all the time, and we get the basics done. What I would really like to do is be around people who have done this for longer periods of time, that have very specialized skills that I can learn from. Not, your lighting director that you mentioned is a good one. I hope you asked him a ton of questions while you were out there with him. But I would not go to the point where, I mean, again, this is just me, but I don't think you should say I'm not very good at it. I would say I do the basics. I'm really interested in learning the finer points of it, and I want to be around people who know that kind of stuff, because that's how I grow. But I'm suggesting that you're up here and you want to grow to here rather than you're way down and trying to grow. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I would do differently. I mean, I don't ever want you to be dishonest, because it's like, it's funny, everybody in the world has a bullshit monitor, a bullshit detector. And you don't want them to have that going off when you're talking to them. But it's not wrong to say that you've lit interviews before. Like I said, I don't believe it. I mean, you must have done that.
Sure, yeah.
By being a photographer. The other thing is just, and here's the rub for international journalism right now. It's just everything now is a budget issue. And I lived through the heydays of lots and lots of money in the media. I actually worked overseas for a while. I will just give you a brief example of that. I flew into Beirut from London one day with a money belt around my waist that had $25,000 in cash in it, because the Bureau was running out of money. Well, those days are gone. Now a Bureau like I was in would have a couple of local kids with cheap cameras running around doing a lot of the stuff. They might have a third country national from somewhere in Europe that comes in. Very few of these American networks staff photographers. You would probably end up in a freelance pool, but you'd end up in a freelance pool that would have lots and lots of people who work more cheaply than you do. And if you're trying to maintain a lifestyle in Europe or someplace like that, it's going to be very difficult to make a living at it. Now, if you could get somebody, you live here and they send you out for 3 weeks to the Ukraine or something, that would be great. Those are hard jobs to get and hard to find. I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm just trying to give you the realities of it. And some of the people that I've known who have done that have gone over there with the camera, but also with the idea that they're going to be a one-man band. They're going to shoot, they're going to write, they're going to voice it, they're going to basically do the whole 9 yards and send back a complete package, because the one-man band is the efficient way to go for these guys. So just a thought.
I'll let someone, does someone else want to go? Because I got follow-ups.
Oh,
Bill, this is Darius Radzis again. So we talked about the interview process. We talked about resumes, but being a TV reporter and a radio reporter, mainly TV, you also look at resume tapes. I was wondering if you can give some pointers on that. Well, what were you looking for when you were VP for news?
The first thing I would look for, and I always tell people, go ahead and put a stand up at the beginning of your tape. Because honestly, when a news director is looking at your tape, if you make them wait 5 minutes to see what you look like, they're going to get bored and they're going to be annoyed. Let them look at you right up front. Let them see what you can do in a stand up, because the first thing they look for is this guy going to, or this woman, is this person going to be a good representative of the station? Does this person have the credibility to be on our newscast and presenting news to the public? And a lot of people do, but there are others that are just plain swings and misses that don't belong on television. And I know that sounds terrible. Darius was saying that he was an intern at Channel 7 in DC where I worked. And the interns one day decided to watch me look at tapes. This was not a good thing, because there were a couple of times where I would punch the tape out of the machine in the first 5 seconds. And so they started timing me to see how long I would watch each one of these tapes. And some people, you can just take one look at them and say, this is absolutely hopeless. I didn't know that I was being watched when I did this, but I punched them out. Other people I would watch for 10 or 15 minutes. So they would be the people that I'd call back, and they would be the people that we bring in for interviews. But put yourself on there right at the beginning, put good stories on there, but keep in mind that what they are looking for is, can this person represent our station? What's the most important single thing that this person has to possess? Credibility. You have to look like you know what you're talking about. You got to know your material, and you have to convey that. Because honestly, if you can't convey those things, you probably are not going to be a big city TV reporter. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope it does.
It did. Thank you.
Okay. Shall we go on? There have been some horror stories that I always like to share with people. And these are kind of in the things probably not to do when you're going into a job interview. One guy brought his mom into an interview with me. I mean, he was like 27 or 8 years old. He was a weatherman, and he brought his mom. And I was trying to figure all this out, and the mom started kind of doing the interview for him. And she explained that he got very nervous when he was under pressure, and sometimes needed her to kind of help him along a little bit. Well, she's not going to be there when he's doing the weather. So I was a little, it was just a very curious position. I saw him on tape and he actually looked pretty good, but it was still a little off-putting to bring your mom to the interview. So don't do that. Another time, a young woman came in and she had a tape that was pretty good. She had from a smaller market, but everything about her on the surface looked like somebody you'd want to talk to. And the first thing she did was tell me that she did not work weekends, she did not work holidays, she did not work nights, and that she did not work overtime because she had a boyfriend. And the boyfriend didn't like it when she wasn't there when he got off work. Well, I'm sorry, this is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week business where the new people basically get the crummy shifts. I suppose you should all be kind of cognizant of that. If you get jobs in the media, your first assignment will not be dayside Monday through Friday. It is very unlikely. But anyway, things like that come in. And I always had to be honest with these people. I had to just say, well, look, that won't work. You've got to basically be able to do these other things. So I would try and do that. Another thing that has really, and I sort of alluded to it, but another thing that's really kind of come up probably in the last 7 or 8 years, the whole one-man band concept. But it's not just a one-man band concept, it's people with multiple skills. You can't get by these days by just saying, I'm a really good writer, or I'm a really good reporter, or I'm a great photographer, or I'm the fastest video editor in town. You have to have those skills that become your primary job, but you have to have all the other skills. You just, the economics of the business are such that it has driven people in my position, news directors, to be more and more efficient. We've hired younger and younger people. We've given them worse and worse assignments. We've made them drive all over the place with their camera. I mean, it's a nightmare, but I had one woman who was literally driving back from the story and had her computer open on the passenger seat and was editing her video at stoplights because she didn't have time to shoot, write, edit, and present her story. No, I'm getting a low battery notice from my camera.
Lost your video. There you go.
Okay. Hold on, I'm going to plug something into my iPad here. stand by. Had no idea it would go out this quickly. I can only hope that that is pushing juice into the machine here. Anyway, those are the kinds of things that have just happened over the years. And so anybody that goes into an interview can't just say, this is all I do. You got to say, I do it all. I learn it all. If I don't know it, I will learn it, because that's the reality of it. I mean, most of the positions where I used to hire reporters, you know, they didn't do anything else except write and report the story. Very seldom in the last 7 or 8 years did I hire just reporters. 1 or 2 occasions where somebody was so good and so kind of advanced that you had to do it. But almost always it was the one-man band. It was the person who could do all of these things efficiently and do the job of 3 people, because the money just doesn't flow into TV the way it used to. It doesn't flow into newspapers the way it used to. It does, you know, the audience might be all over the web, but there's no money in the web either. So you have to basically find ways to get things done that allow you to be very, very efficient. I want to tell you one other thing about hiring. I bragged about how many people I've interviewed and how many people I've hired. How successful was I in all these hires? Well, I had a belief that if half the people I hired became really good contributors to the newsroom, I was doing really well. Half. Now, it seems that that's a very small number, but it's very hard to interview people and hire them and have them be great players. Now, there were a lot of people I hired that were kind of solid enough to be, you know, in the background and keep their jobs. It wasn't like they failed completely, but they weren't the people who were big difference makers. You need to get difference makers. And the thing I compare it to, and to me makes it more believable. In a couple hours, the NFL draft is going to start. And, you know, I was operating on a little videotape and a half-hour interview. The NFL studies these guys for months. They have stats, they have videos, they have their high school coaches, their teammates, they have every metric you could possibly have. And they still get it wrong about half the time. You know, if you look at the top 10 draftees over the last 10 years, you know, there are dozens of guys who just didn't make it in the pros, just didn't have whatever, even though all that information was out there. So it's, you know, if somebody gets hired instead of you, don't take it personally. It's because somebody like me got it wrong in some cases. In some cases, you know, it just, you can't go in and say, I aced that interview, I'm going to get that job. Because sometimes you're going to go in and say, I really screwed up that interview, and you will get the job. It's just an enormous chance and risk that you take and that everybody takes. And the hiring process is totally inexact. I mean, honestly, I wish that I had done better, but I still think I was pretty good. I wish that anybody who interviews you does better. But honestly, if anybody's doing better than 50%, my hat's off to them. Who else has a question?
Oh, there you go.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, being the manager of the newsroom, you're hiring different positions, and I understand that being an assistant news director in Corpus Christi, that's, you know, you get more applications for a particular, like, you know, on-air stuff. You get a gazillion resume tapes, and for an assignment desk, you might just get 1 or 2. But if you're on air and you're the one that's getting a gazillion, you know, buckets filled of you know, back then it was VHS tapes, now DVDs, now you get emails with links. How do you get yourself noticed? Like, if I sent you a resume tape and you have hundreds of them, how can I get your attention to make you watch my stuff? Because I know that you're not going to watch them all.
Well, I guess the simple answer is break all the rules. basically, there are so many news directors who say, don't call me, send a tape. Call them. There are other people who say, I have somebody else look at tapes for me, and they call them down to the right number, talk to them. Don't do it. I tell people, particularly people starting out, there is nothing wrong. If you want to get a job in a small market, get in your car, drive to some small town that has TV, knock on the door and just say, look, I'm here. I want to talk to you. Will you give me an interview? Now, I was lucky in the early part of my career or life or whatever. Lots and lots of people were kind enough to give me interviews. And so as a result, as I went on, I never turned down somebody who called up and said they wanted an interview. That's why I did so many interviews, is that I basically let everybody come in. Sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes I was shocked at how well it worked, but you do everybody. And it's one thing when you're looking for a job, it seems like there are no jobs out there. But here's the reverse of that. When you're the guy looking to hire somebody, it seems like there's nobody out there to hire. I know that sounds crazy, because I know that all of you think, oh my God, there are so many people out there that want this same job. And to some degree there are, but they're not the ones who are aggressively knocking on the door. They're not the ones who are making the phone calls. They're not the ones who are pestering somebody else in your newsroom to go into your office and say, hey, talk to Eddie. Eddie's a good guy. It's just, you've got to overcome some of that stuff. I'll give you an example, and it's not one that I'm necessarily proud of, but in my willingness to interview almost anybody, some lady called up and said she was a lawyer, but she'd like to get into TV. And I said, well, okay. Most lawyers want to get into TV because most lawyers hate being lawyers. But, I let her come in, and she came in, and it was instantly apparent that she was very smart. She was very good looking. She probably was a terror in the courtroom, because I think that I noticed that she just had sort of a lethal way about her. She was like predatory almost in her willingness to go out and get stories and beat the competition. Long story short, I hired her as a freelancer 1 day a week on News Channel 8. And if for those who don't know the DC market, News Channel 8, we paid, I think, I can't remember, but it was maybe $200 a day as a freelancer. I hired her 1 day a week as a freelancer,
I know who you're
which she
talking
thought
about.
was quaint, because her hourly rate as a lawyer was close to $400. But anyway, this lady immediately was good, immediately got put on Channel 7, immediately worked her way into a great job, and became instantly one of the best reporters in the market.
Is she Megyn Kelly?
Unfortunately, yes, thank you.
Yes. I knew
Megyn
she was
Kelly. She was immediately hired away by Fox, who tripled the salary that I was giving her. There's just no way you can keep somebody like that. Now, when she was with us, she was not political. There was anything Fox-like about her, but she obviously developed over time into becoming somebody's nightmare, happily not mine. But it does give you an idea that if you talk to enough people, sometimes you get shocked and you hire somebody that is a can't miss prospect. I don't even know what she's doing now, but it's a story I tell just because you just never ever know what you're going to run into when you start hiring people. Who else has a question out there? Somebody must.
Can I ask you a question on the flip side? I'm not sure if this is off topic. It's
Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm basically going to be doing a huge pivot from environmental and climate covering to business.
Yeah.
And this summer, I'm going to be doing an internship doing business for the first time. So it's going to be my first exposure to that. And after that, I'm going to be looking for jobs in the business beat. So I'm kind of curious, how do you market yourself when you don't have that much experience in that specific beat and you're going into a newsroom that's all about that beat? To be more exact, my experience so far reporting has been in the environment, and I'm going into more real estate beat. And that internship is going to be my only exposure where I'm going to be getting clips, regarding business, crypto, real estate. But
Where is
I don't know
the
how to
internship?
market myself. It's going to be with the Miami Herald.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to be doing real estate and crypto, but I want to come back to New York, and I have my eye on, Housing Wire and The Real Deal, which they do real estate.
Right.
So what's a good way for me to be more marketable when I finish that summer internship for The Real Deal and Housing?
Well, I think what you got to do, and we ran lots and lots of interns through the television stations where I worked, and Darius is one of them. We basically got them in there and we sort of turned them loose. It became up to the intern to find reporters to work with or to work on the assignment desk. We didn't give them specific jobs. We just said, look, you're here, make friends, pick people's brains, and make this internship what works for you, not what works for us, because honestly, we didn't get a lot of benefit out of doing internships, but you did, or the people did. But one of the reasons we did it that way is we wanted to find out which people had the most enterprise, which people had the most drive to go out and engage with various different people in our newsroom to develop their skills, because those are the same traits you look for in a reporter who's going to go out there and have to enterprise, and is going to have to basically make friends, is going to have to basically set their own agenda and do all those things. That makes a good reporter. So my advice to you going into an internship is simply pick everybody's brains, get to know everybody. Don't sit back. Don't just take the assignments they give you, which will probably be like, file this or something. Basically, find out what their stories are that they're working on. Find ways you can be helpful, but mostly just pick their brains every chance you get. Basically, ask them questions. People do not generally mind bragging about themselves. Well, I'm doing this story today because I had this interview and I was the one who figured out such and such connected to such and such. They like to talk about themselves, but you got to get them going, because ultimately they're going to be the people that you will use as references to get to the next level. And you have to basically find ways of doing that. And you're going to be at the Miami Herald. You're going to have to find people there that are good enough for you to learn from and who are capable of being a good reference for you. You're going to have to impress them, but that helps a lot. The other thing, I don't know how many, I only know one real estate person in the media, and that's at CNBC, Diana Olick. I don't know if you've ever seen her or not, but find people like her, write to them, send them an email. Just say, look, I'm trying to get into the real estate end of the business reporting. I'm at the Miami Herald right now. I'm doing this. What do you think? What's your advice? People love to give advice, but you've got to reach out to them. They have no way to find you. You have to basically reach out to them and be aggressive about it. Because that's, again, goes back to the interns who do that make better reporters later. Just surviving an internship is nothing. Really working an internship and making contributions, and most importantly, making contacts who can help you later. That's what you should be doing. Okay. All right, Darius, were you saying something too?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because I was an assistant news director in Corpus Christi, and I'm not sure if you've ever run into these situations, because I have, where you're putting out a job advertisement for a position in the newsroom, and you get all kinds of resumes and all kinds of resume tapes, and you need the position filled, but they're not the candidates for you, and you run out of all these, and you went through it all, and now what are you left with? Are you left with picking the best worst one, or do you just keep it open until you find the right candidate? And how do you do that?
It depends a lot on how big your newsroom is. The bigger your newsroom is, the more you can afford to wait. When you're in and I've been in these newsrooms where you got 5 reporters, and if one of them's gone, that's 20% of your staff. You've got to get somebody in there right away. But if the applicants don't necessarily do it for you, you basically just start calling people. You call other news directors, you call people at other stations, other reporters. Who do you know out there? It's not uncommon at all. What I used to do, and I think it's fair, I would call down to like Richmond or something, and maybe Virginia Beach, and I'd say, who are the great reporters that are working at the other stations that are beating you? And let them feed their competition to me. So, there are a lot of little tricks you can play like that. I would always stall before I'd hire somebody that was not completely up to speed. But at some point, you got to fill the slot, because when you got 5 reporters and one of them's gone, and now somebody else wants vacation, and now somebody else is calling sick, you've got to have people. It's also a good rationale for having freelancers around that you can use as needed, because so often, trouble comes in bunches. And when you really get strung out, you need to have some go-to player that you can use for things like that.
Thank you.
All right, good enough. Any other questions?
I have one more.
Go ahead.
So my question is about what do you think is kind of, if you've had an interview already, right? And now you're waiting to see how it goes and whatever. What's the sort of the best way to follow up, and and how long should you wait to follow up?
Don't wait at all. I guess that's the first thing I would say. Always email the next day a thank you note. Basically say, thanks for having me in for the interview. I really enjoyed it. I loved your station. I really see myself as somebody who could make a contribution there. And please let me know if there's anything else I can do to push your decision forward. So follow up immediately. And then, like I say, break any rule. It's okay to just keep calling and bugging people. It's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease in most of these cases. The person that really, really wants the job, who's calling you every morning saying, give me the job, is probably going to do a better job than somebody who did the interview and just went away. Another thing that I always found kind of nice is people wrote me little thank you letters in the mail when I left various stations, and I still have them somewhere in my house in DC, because that's where all our junk is. But I would have boxes and I'd throw them all in a drawer, of letters from people. And they were all just like little half-page notes. But that's where somebody has the chance to basically show that they're kind of polite, they're informed, they really are grateful. They're taking the time to do kind of the correct thing. That means a lot. And the ones who do things like that, you tend to favor over somebody who has just done the interview and walked off. So Don't worry about over communicating, even when they tell you to stop over communicating. Devin, have you got a question?
I do not at the moment, but if anybody else has one, feel free to unmute and ask. We're almost at the end point here, so.
I got to leave a little bit early. Bill, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this for us, and thanks for sharing your insights. It's really meaningful and appreciate it a lot.
Well, I'm happy to do it, and I enjoy these things. It's funny. I'm always nervous before I sit down, but once I get into these things, I really enjoy them.
Oh,
Thanks again. And Daniel, make sure, hey, before your internship starts, we've got a few business journalists in our mentorship program. Maybe take a look at that if you're not signed up for it. All right, have a good one, guys. Thank you.
All right. Let me just kind of summarize a little bit, if that's okay.
absolutely.
And we'll get you out of here in time so everybody can get to the bar in time. You know, overall, when you go into an interview, you just really have to be positive. You know, there's no there's no substitute for positivity, friendliness, wanting to help somebody solve their problems and to achieve their goals. You want to be that team member that everybody counts on. I mean, that's great career advice, but it's also great interview advice. You don't want to be a jerk. You want to be humble. You want to be, you want to be aggressive, but you want to be humble about it. You don't want to act like you're a hot shot. You basically want to draw the line between confidence and arrogance and just say, I really can do this. Give me a shot. You basically have to avoid being judgmental about things. I mean, there are a lot of times you'll go into a job interview and it might be a crummy newsroom. It might be some place where people you don't necessarily like as well as you'd want to work. And you maybe yourself might have reservations about working with them. Don't let that out. You have to basically be a positive person in any circumstance. Because again, guys like me are looking for people who are going to make a difference by being good team members. Okay, I'm drained now, but I've had a good time, and thank you all for coming and listening to me babble on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much to everybody who attended today's webinar, and thank you again to Bill for joining us and giving us those tips. That was awesome. And if anybody would like to keep in contact with Bill, how would you like me to?
You have my email address. You can give them, anybody can have my email address. They can write to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much again to everybody for attending, and thank you again to Bill Lord for being here. We really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night.
All right. Enjoy, everybody.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Have a good night, guys.
Bye-bye.